Hi, in this video, let us discuss about exception handling in Java. We discuss these topics: what is an exception class hierarchy, how to handle exception, and types of exceptions. Okay, what is an exception? It is an abnormal condition that arises in code during the runtime. So when you run a program, when you execute a program, suppose if something abnormal thing happens while executing the code during the runtime, it is an exception. It is called an exception. Because of that, what will happen is the program will terminate abnormally. Okay, so it is a runtime error. If we don't handle it, the program will end abnormally, but it is not desirable effect. Okay, so we need to handle it and make the program run smoothly. Okay, so how to handle exception? So before handling how to handle exception, let us see the exception class hierarchy. In Java, exceptions are modeled as classes. So we have a superclass throwable, then we have two subclasses, error and exception. Exception under exception we have exceptions like runtime exception, and we have IO exception, class not found exception, and so on. So base class of all exception is throwable, and it has two subclasses, exception and error. Error means the errors happens in the Java runtime itself, and we cannot handle it in the code. So we don't discuss about that. Okay. So all these exception classes belongs to java.long package. Okay, so now we will see how to handle exception. So there are two ways you can handle exception. You can use a block called try block and catch block. Suppose if you think that the code you write is vulnerable to throw exception, you can write this code inside the try block, and we can have corresponding catch blocks. So each catch block is for handling one exception. Okay, so this is one way of handling exception. Suppose you don't want to handle exception, then you can use a throws class. Okay, suppose your method you write in a class is expected to throw an exception, and you don't want to handle it inside that method, then you can use the throws class and declare that your method will throw an exception. So this is another way of handling exception. Okay, so what are the types of exception? Basically there are two types of exception. One is checked exceptions and other is unchecked exceptions or runtime exception. What is the meaning of checked exceptions? There are certain exceptions that either you have to handle it or you have to declare throws class. So suppose if you think that your code is vulnerable to throw these kind of exceptions, either you need to handle it inside the code using the try catch block, or you can use the throws class. If we don't do that, then during the compilation time the compiler will give you the compilation error message. So these are the checked exception. So the compiler checks whether these exceptions are handled using try catch block or you use throws class. If we do that, the compiler will successfully compile it, or if we don't do that, the compiler will give you compilation error message. There are certain exceptions, even if you don't handle, the compiler uh, will not give you any error, compilation error. These kind of exceptions are called unchecked exceptions or runtime exceptions. For example, null pointer exception. If you call a method on an object reference, but that object reference is having a null value, in that case you will get null pointer exception. These kind of exceptions are called unchecked exceptions or runtime exceptions. We need to avoid these kind of exceptions in our code.